Okay, I'm back again. Whoa, look at so I did the hair again just for my public. Yeah, jeez, you know, it's amazing how gray it looks sometimes. What happens when you're approaching 61, I guess. Anyway, so today, probably could put all these videos, a bunch of videos on one post. I'm thinning a top. Actually, let's flip it around. Yeah, okay, so we're thinning a top here. What I've done, I've got the neck done to a certain point. I've marked in where I do the sides. This is called Spanish heel technique. You know, I've marked out all the spots. I'm doing it a little bit off center for a reason I won't bother describing at the moment, but oh, that's interesting. Anyway, yeah, so I've marked everything off, but I'm waiting for my bandsaw, and there's some cuts here that I'd really like to wait for that, you know. So I'm gonna do that, and yeah, so that's all ready. So the next task for today is to go on the top. So I've cut out the sound hole. Oh, here's the sound hole. I had scored it already, so it's a pretty simple matter of continuing that cut. We're pretty good, actually, pretty good. Just the top is a little bit not quite ready, you know. Like right now, I'm looking for about just over 2 mil, like 2.1, 2.2 mil. So these bits right here are about 2.2 right now, and I got a chunk to take down up here. Like this is like, where are we at? Kind of at like 2.5. So I got to take it down like 0.4 millimeters. It doesn't sound like much, but sometimes it feels like a canyon. So I was using the scraper, but for this I'm gonna use my block plane a bit. One thing you gotta be really careful, well, especially here, because it's not like a sterile laboratory. When I'm working with this with the surface, with the outside part of the soundboard down, I try to be meticulously clean and getting little bits of grit, because the smallest little bit of grit will show up. So I've got the plane set at a really low level, and I'm just taking the finest shavings here. Yeah, let's take a bit down. I'm avoiding this area, which I've got down pretty close to where I want it, I think. Going for this sort of thing, I find it much better to cross, even straight across, but usually go at a bit of an angle, you know what I mean? As opposed to straight down the grain. That's sort of, I find it's asking for tear out. And you really don't want that. I mean, I'm on the backside, and in a way it doesn't matter, but especially because this is a commission, I would appreciate if it was bloody perfect. And I'm sure that the person commissioning me wouldn't mind that either. I can do pretty close to perfect, probably. It's not really possible in the wider sense, I suppose, but that's okay. So I'll take it pretty close, and then I'll maybe head back to the scraper. I find the scraper works better on really hardwoods, you know? Like when I was scraping that Macassar ebony fingerboard, it just kind of comes out in peels of shavings, you know? And like if this was a hard back, at this stage I'd probably be just using the scraper. I would anyway. But I'm finding this works better at the moment. And also it's weird too, you know. The day matters. You know, who can say what that's all about? I think the day matters. It depends on the side of the bed you got up off on. Depends on, it's getting there. Yeah, quite a bit to go still. The side of the bed you got up on, but also the climate. I mean, this room, I'm inside. You know, I work outside when I can, but right now it's too humid for working on something like this. I find, what the hell am I talking about? Anyway, I mean, this room is pretty stable. I have a dehumidifier going. It's always, at the moment, just around 60%, which is fine for what I'm doing at the moment. Yeah, I don't know. Somehow every day is different. Probably has to do with climate, has to do with how you're feeling, I know, all that stuff. It's definitely weird. Probably a lot of it has to do with, you know, the physicality of how you're feeling and all that. I don't know. Who knows? I don't want to get into that. That's just a waste of energy. I'm being especially careful around the sound hole. I was, you know, thinning it down without it cut, but now that it's cut, it's I don't know if I'd say delicate, but you know, you kind of want to be careful. That would be what you might call a weak spot. You don't want that to pop out or have a split out right there. It would show up like crazy. Anyway, this is great. I love doing this stuff. I mostly work with hand tools, eh? Like I have a, as I mentioned, the power tools that I have, the main ones are a cheap commercial bandsaw. That's the one thing. Like mostly I like to work by hand, right? Like I have kind of a luxury of time up here, and you know, I'm not popping them out, as it were. But some power tools are great. Like a decent bandsaw would be really great. And the one I have is fine, but you know, it needs kind of constant tweaking. And I have a drill press. Drill press is really great. I have a hand drill as well, a power hand drill. And the other thing I have is a belt sander. Another cheap quality, but it's been going for 4 years, so it's ever so good so far. Hey, maybe I got my mic on. So every now and then what I'm doing is I'm just tapping it. I don't know, just like really just for, can you hear that? Sounds really good. Like very bell-like. Yeah, I love that sound. You know, what can I say? I'm not like this huge sound, not this huge like tap tone expert. I'm not trying to imply that I am. So when I do that, I'm tapping it just to listen to see what it's doing. You know what I mean? And that's partly part of my learning process, because you know I've been making instruments a long time, but guitars are fairly new. The other thing that I do that I think for me is most helpful is can you see how that moves? I'm moving the soundboard back and forth, right? Seeing how flexible it is. Most of the movement is coming from here, right? Like there's a pretty strong brace right across here, and here there's not a lot of movement up through here. I mean, there would be, I suppose, but a lot of this movement's coming through here. It's vibrating back and forth. I think the classicals tend to go boom, 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 you know what I mean? I was watching this interesting thing on the physics of guitar making, and some of the steel strings kind of go boom, 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 and the classicals more or less. It's partly because of the bracing, you know. Like I do a really traditional fan bracing, and it allows the guitar to move in this way. It's pretty cool, actually, all this stuff. The other thing that's really nice is planing it, because you end up with a very clean edge, right? I've been wanting to mention this in other videos, but this piece of wood has a lot of silk. They call it silk. which are medullary rays. I think that's how you pronounce it. And what it is, okay, the grain's going this way, right? But if you look carefully, you won't be able to see it, I'm sure, on the camera, but there's like little striations going across, do you know what I mean? And this is somehow, it's linking the wood together. I can't quite remember how that occurs in the tree, but it's super nice and quite beautiful, And then when it's under finished, that would show up, I think, quite nicely, but we'll see how it all is when I get to that point, Yeah, anyway, that's about all I need to say today, probably. I guess I should not bore everyone with me doing a really fine planing job. Yeah, here, I'll flip it around for a sec. Yeah, okay. That's pretty good. It's a little angled. Oh, sorry. So, I'll do this and probably get this pretty close to being done. The next step will be adding, doing the bracing. And the bracing, I got this spruce lined up. I got about 4 pieces of this Engelmann spruce, quite nice, I think. Anyway, for the bracing, I split it, so I love doing that. So I'll be out splitting, and then so I'll brace the top. And of course, because it's not a common size, I'm pondering what to do, in terms of the bracing. And what will actually happen is I'll do the bracing, and then I'll feel it as it goes, see how it feels and all that. And then once it's braced, I'll end up attaching it to the neck and all that. Probably do more work on the neck first. But anyway, yeah, that's about it. Anyway, that's enough for today. Okay, enough talking. I'm still working. Ciao. Ciao. See you later.